Hi guys, so today we're going to do one-step equations, which means you just have one step. So if we look at our first example, which is example 1, we have 9 equals w minus 13. So before I actually start solving this, I'm going to draw a line through my equal sign so I can see both sides. So I have a 9 on this side and I have a w minus 13 on this side. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to circle the variable that I'm solving for. And again, a variable is just a letter that you see, so it could be any letter in the alphabet. Here we have W, but you'll see them all. So I'm circling that so I know what I'm solving for because I want to get that by itself. Now W is attached to this minus 13. Now when we solve equations, we're going to do the opposite of what we're told. Since this says minus 13, to undo it, we're going to use the inverse operation. So minus to undo subtraction, we're going to use addition. So I'm going to add 13 because negative 13 plus 13 is 0. That goes bye-bye. But whatever I do to this side, I have to do to this side. So I'm going to add 13. And the reason for that is we need to keep this equation balanced. So what I want you to think is an equation is like a skateboard. You need to keep your weight balanced. So whatever you do here, you have to do on this side. Hence why I drew that red line, because that's really going to help differentiate between the both sides. So now I'm just going to do 9 plus 13. Well, 9 plus 13 is 22. So 22 equals W. Oops, sorry, that's a weird W. You can write it like this, or you can say W equals 22. They both mean the same thing. I personally like the variable first. But if you wrote it like this, that's the exact same thing. It doesn't matter. So don't worry about that. But if you solve it this way and you want the W on the other side, just flip it over. It's honestly whatever you prefer at that point, okay? Let's do another example. So example 2, I'm going to cover up here. Now for this example, is we have a negative 7g equals 28. I'm going to draw a line through that equal sign. And then I'm going to look for that variable. And this variable is g. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to circle everything here because right now that negative 7 is attached to that g. And I want g by itself. Now, since this negative 7 is attached to the g, I really need to think, how is this attached? And it's attached by multiplication. You're really multiplying. So I drew a small little dot right here. So you're really multiplying negative 7 times g, which gives us negative 7g. To undo multiplication, I need to use the inverse operation, which is division. So I'm going to divide by negative 7 on both sides. What this is going to do on this left-hand side, negative 7 divided by negative 7, well, that's 1. So that's going to go bye-bye. They're going to cancel. And I'm going to be left with just g. And then on this side, I'm going to have 28 divided by negative 7, which is negative 4. So g equals negative 4. One step, you're done. One thing I want to note is I circled that negative with it because if I didn't have that negative sign, it wouldn't work. And you can go back and double check it. So I'm just going to double check it by saying negative 7 times by negative 4, because that's what I said g is. Negative 7 times negative 4 is in fact positive 28. You can type that in your calculator and double check. With these solving for equations, you could always double check your answers. I recommend that you do, just to make sure that you're right. Now this first example that we did, you can kind of eyeball it and see it, but the second example, because there's some multiplication, you may have to actually write it out. In this next example, we're going to use division, so I would definitely recommend to double check it, which we will. So let's move on to that example. Example 3. Now if we look here at example 3, is we have f over 6 equals 4. What I'm going to do, draw a line through that equal sign. Circle that variable. But f is being divided by 6. And A lot of times when we see division, we freak out because we don't like it and we don't want anything to do with it. But when you're dividing, to undo it is multiplication. That's the inverse operation. So I'm going to multiply by 6 over 1 on both sides. Okay? This and this 6 are going to go bye-bye. They cancel out. And you're going to be left with f over 1. Anything over 1 is itself. So I'm just going to be left with f, which equals, and then I'm just going to multiply 4 times 6, 24. So f equals 24. If you want to check it, just substitute 24 in for f. Well, 24 divided by 6 does in fact equal 4. Checked. Okay? Always check your answers if you're hesitant. That's not a problem to do. Okay, let's do some more examples. We got 3 more. Okay, example 4. Example 4, now we have 15 plus m equals 35. I'm going to draw the line down the equal sign, circle the variable, and I'm going to take that sign just in case it's negative. But in this case, we have addition, so we don't really have to worry about minusing anything. But this 15 is attached to this m by addition. And this 15 is positive. So to undo it is I'm going to subtract by 15 on both sides. So m is going to equal 20. And again, you can substitute it in. There's no problem if you want to check your answer on the side just like this. Well, 15 plus 20 or 20 plus 15. 35. Check. Okay? Always check your answers. Even if you just type it in your calculator, you don't write it down in your notes, you don't write it down on a test or a quiz. If you just do it on your calculator and it checks out, that's good. Okay? I suggest that you do it. It's a great test-taking strategy. It's a great way to reassure yourself because a lot of times we get these simple problems and we're like, there's no way that's the answer, and it probably is. Okay? So double check your work. Let's go to the next example, example 5. And we have negative 5x equals 45. Draw that line down the equal sign. Circle the variable. So negative 5x. We did one earlier in the video, and when we have a negative 5 attached to an x, that means that they're being multiplied. So I'm going to do a little multiplication symbol in there. Now, to undo multiplication is division. That's the inverse operation. So I'm going to divide by a negative 5. And the reason why it's a negative 5 is because we have the negative up there. Okay? The negative 5s here are going to go bye-bye. They cancel out. So I'm going to have x equals, well, 45 divided by negative 5 is negative 9. X equals negative 9. You want to check it out on the side? You're more than welcome to. Negative 5 times negative 9 checks out. 45. Remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. Okay, if it was a negative times a positive, then it would still be a negative number. But a negative times a negative cancels itself out and becomes a positive. All right, last example. Example 6. Negative 4x equals negative 12. I'm going to draw a line down that equal sign. I'm going to circle that variable. And if I look, I have a negative sign and a negative sign. I know we get scared with negatives because they happen a lot, but they're nothing to be worried about. These are being multiplied like we just talked about. Negative 4 times x, which gives us negative 4x. To undo multiplication, you're going to divide by negative 4 on both sides. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 cancels out, and you're just left with x because they go bye-bye. Negative 12 divided by negative 4, positive 3. Okay? Negative 4 times by 3, if we're checking, does indeed check out to negative 12. Keep that in mind, okay? So rule of thumb for equations, one-step